Welcome to Cambridge Inside Out. I'm Robert Winters.
Judy Nathans.
And today's April 9th, 2019.
Opening day, and they're losing, I think.
We were down 5-4 last time I checked.
Well, it was 6-5 at the end of the 8th.
Oh boy.
So it's the 9th inning. That's it.
This was the first year I actually completely missed the flyover. And how do you miss that? Because it's always brutally loud. And I was waiting to go to class. Usually I hear it, and I didn't hear it at all.
Stealth, yeah.
Maybe it came from a different place this time. I don't know. Who has to say? Actually, April 9th is also an anniversary of sorts for me, because this is the day I did my PhD thesis defense.
Wow, you remember that, huh?
Well, it was in 1990.
Well,
so
what do you mean, well, that's
like
30 years ago.
29 years ago, yeah.
Wow.
So.
And you passed with flying colors?
Well, you know, the thing about PhDs and thesis defenses is, as Dan Kahn in the mathematics department at MIT once said, it's really, these are just working papers. You know, don't, you know, anybody who's a grad, and this is my advice to graduate students everywhere, don't put so much of your personal emotional self into your thesis.
It's just
I mean, do it because you want to do a good job, but the thing is, ultimately, it really is just your ticket to working in the outside world.
Right.
And, you know, and having, you know, finding job security or just jobs, period.
And they expect more from you after that, not
That's
just
right,
that
yeah.
thesis.
So the thing is, there are a lot of contexts where if you don't have that degree, they won't even entertain the possibility of you working. I actually was teaching at Wellesley College before I got my degree, because they needed a leave replacement, and I had won awards for conspicuously effective teaching. But really, it's just working papers when you get right down to it.
Well, you got them.
Got them, yeah. So anyway, last week, we just mentioned a couple of things that were coming up. I thought we'd mention a couple of, it's almost like report backs in a way.
Well, for you, yeah.
Right. So there was on this past Sunday, a couple of days ago, there was a friend of mine and a videographer, Roger Hakopian, made a video production probably about 10 years ago, actually. It was called Destination Watertown. And it really is an interesting kind of a personal history of the Hood Rubber Company that was like the mainstay of East Watertown for many years.
Hakopian, is he Armenian?
He is very much Armenian.
So that's part of the whole Watertown thing.
He has done video productions about his family and Armenian history.
Because it's a big Armenian community in Watertown.
Yeah, but the thing is, part of the reason for that was the Hood Rubber Company. And it was a job, and there are people, when people were fleeing the genocide in Europe, they came to places like Worcester, Baltimore, and Watertown. Actually, Lynn for a while.
There was a factory in Watertown?
Yeah,
Where was it?
It was East Arlington. If you go across from where the Arsenal Mall is.
East Arlington, not Watertown.
I meant to say East Watertown.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
You know, relatively close to Cambridge, actually. And it was this dominant place. There was something like, I forget how many buildings they had, maybe 30 buildings. More actually, maybe more.
Do you know what is there? Is it
well, for the longest time it was all leveled. Now there's a lot of things are being built in those spaces.
Okay, so it's kind of an industrial area along that whole.
It was very much. Now there's some housing in there. There's still some vacant places out there, to be sure. I didn't know the whole history of it, and it was great. But anyway, the reason I mention it is that I mean, you can actually watch it on. You can just
YouTube. Is it a YouTube video?
Yes, you can Google Destination Watertown, and you'll find a YouTube video, and it's a great production.
It's also on your site. You have a link to it.
Yeah, I got a link in there. But it's about an hour long, and it was great. And it's really about the people, and it was, for me, it was really engrossing.
1969, it lasted a long time.
It lasted a very, very long time.
Wow.
And one of the real joys about going to a showing, as opposed to just watching on a video, is that people who came there included people who had worked in the factory, people who had family. I was sitting next to an elderly woman who, when somebody came up on the screen in the video, they said, "Oh, you know," and they remembered because she was really kind of sad because she had passed away last year, whatever.
Yeah, that makes
and
it
these are the most delightful people. They were the most hard-working, struggling people. You know.
Dying breed, though.
Really a dying breed. We've tended to replace them with people who feel maybe a little entitled sometimes. But these are people who, you know, whose family, they may have lost half of their family in genocide. Yeah. They came there, they worked, they went to school and then went to work, right? They didn't have any time at all. And the stories they told, and to a person, every one of them said, this was the best life, these were the best years of my life. It was actually really
Well,
inspiring.
there was community. There was,
was
a
all about
guaranteed
community.
paycheck. I mean, although I'm sure must have been hard too. I mean, was it a
Very hard.
benevolent owner? Who knows?
They actually provided medical care, but largely because they needed, if somebody got injured, they wanted them to continue working, so they had to patch them up.
When it's called the
Right.
hood rubber, is it anything to do with hood milk?
No, I don't think it had
Separate?
anything to do with it.
Okay.
But when I was a kid, we used to wear PF Flyer sneakers.
Yeah.
That's where they made the PF Flyers.
Wow.
And
But I
anyways,
wonder if Hood, the family itself, must.
there was
something
they actually
in
gave a little
one.
bit of the genealogy
Yeah.
of the two brothers. There was one great, like a father who had two children who started. They had been in the company, in the production work, and then they started their own company, and they it was two brothers.
But they weren't Armenian.
No, they were not. In
But
fact,
they hired.
and during it wasn't all Armenians that worked
Right.
in the Hood Rubber
Sure, there
Company.
were
There were
Italians,
Irish
Irish,
people,
yeah.
Italian people,
Yeah.
people from all over.
Yeah.
But the thing is, the Armenians really, really, really they created a whole community. Because this
Yeah.
was really, and there was this act of chain migration where people.
They
One
could bring
person
their
came over,
family,
they had a
sure.
job. There's work here. Please come over here, and then
Well,
more
that's
people
how it
followed.
was around the country. I think.
Yeah, oh yeah. So, but it was a great story, and it's really kind of local here, and I
I'll
really
have to take a
appreciated
look at
seeing
it.
it.
Yeah.
Actually, one delightful thing is one person I know who was the head of the Cambridge Historical Commission for years. He's now retired. Is a guy named Bill King. And sure enough, there was Bill King. It turns out
Yeah.
he's the grandson of one of the Hoods that started the company.
Oh, wow.
He was on the technical side. He had been a chemical
That's
engineer,
interesting.
and there was Bill
Yeah.
King. My goodness.
Wow.
So it was great. A lot of good connections.
Yeah, nice.
And really, really, really nice being around some of the people.
Is this a new film or is
It's
this?
he made it about 10 years ago.
Oh,
I
okay. So
believe.
he's
Yeah.
just re-showing it. Okay.
Yeah, it's just sort of basically getting the word around there. So he's done multiple showings in various places, and it's always very, very
Yeah.
well received when he does it. Now, I think I was going to go right after that. I was going to go to some forum that they had in
Yeah,
Leslie
sponsored
University.
by the Harvard Square Neighborhood Association.
It was either
What-
that
what's
or
it called? No,
well, there's-
Susan Blier's group.
Well, there's also this. They're spawned off this new entity they're calling
Oh.
Livable Cambridge.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah,
Oh, here it is.
which has a-
Sponsored by Livable Cambridge, the consortium of local neighborhood groups. Hosted by the Fresh Pond Residents Alliance, though.
Right.
So, but it was
So
all
they
those
put it
players.
together.
Harvard Square, yeah, 'cause,
Right. And the title was "The Market or the People,
People.
Which Does Our City Serve?"
Right.
But I think it was primarily trying to go to and I don't want to go over on about
No.
overlay district
No.
business this week, but that was kind of what spurred the.
Yeah, well, they had a presentation by Yona Freemark, who is at MIT, doctoral candidate in urban studies, and he just presented some facts on. He's looked at Chicago and he's looked at another city. I mean, obviously Chicago is, but in Chicago they did a similar thing. Only it wasn't geared towards affordable housing. It was all market driven. So they've taken over where transit is,
Right.
and upzoning. In other words, the whole thing is upzoning.
Well, I mean, there's been a lot more embracing of
Right, up to a
upzoning
half a mile.
in the sense
Right.
of densification close to
Right.
transit.
Right.
And even people I know who were the downzoning people have largely sort of come around to being okay with having greater density around transit.
Right. Well, that was the thing. But he said there's been actually few studies on the results of upzoning, and then
Right.
there's the amenity effect. I don't know which. So
Well, one of the effects, if you had a place that was kind of a bit rundown area.
yeah. Well, Chicago.
Yeah, or parts of Boston too, city
Yeah.
of Boston, are actually on transit lines, like Dudley
Mm-hmm.
Square. And if you put in, fancy new stuff, there's a good chance that that'll draw investment and then actually make people who normally wouldn't have wanted to live there want
Yeah,
to
but
live
then what
there.
happens though? The question is to the people that can't afford then to live in
Right.
those spaces. That's
Right.
the problem with this kind of development. Had no. I don't know what their inclusionary rules are. It's not like ours, and it was also not. I mean, our overlay, the whole thing here is really specifically focused on affordable housing developers getting a break.
Right.
So, but then they had the panel
advantage.
of neighborhood people. Chuck Hines, East Cambridge,
Yeah,
who's lived in.
yeah.
Doug Brown.
Fresh Pond Residence Lines.
Javon Wheeler.
He's also a city council candidate.
Oh,
Yeah,
so it is the same person.
More and more people who are.
Well, wait a minute, I might have been writing this down wrong. I don't think it was, I think I wrote that down, because this guy works at the Lincoln Institute for Land Conservation. And isn't he MIT, Siobhan?
Yes.
Oh, no,
or else
maybe.
he was.
He a volunteer for
You're
tennis.
right about that.
No, so who knows? I don't know.
But one of the things I'm actually
yeah.
noticing, because there's actually there's a petition that's going down around East Cambridge
Oh, I
regarding
didn't
the
sign that.
courthouse.
That was all passed around there.
Yeah,
The
I'm not going to
courthouse.
sign it either.
I didn't either. I just.
But the thing, not that I'm unsympathetic, it's
No,
just
but
that
it's
you don't
20
jump
years
in.
they've had, I know.
You know, if it's a 20-hour process, you don't jump in the 19th hour and say.
But
let's do it
also,
again.
well, it's been vacant for so long, and I just want
Well,
to see
also,
something
if
done. And,
you know, if there's a person's basically saying, oh no, you shouldn't give this to Leggett McCall to actually redo the redevelopment with 24 units of housing.
Yeah.
You should make the entire thing housing, whatever. But
Is it
nobody is saying who's going to pay, because the truth is there's probably 30 million or more in asbestos abatement, plus the whatever it turns out to be a $500,000
They want the city
unit
to
build.
buy. They already own it, don't they?
No,
Leggett McCall? No?
well, the thing is, it's state property. They
I
have
thought the
the
agreement was already made a few weeks
the
ago.
DCAM, the assets management group for the state, basically said, okay, Leggett McGall is the chosen developer. But the truth is that until an actual development plan is settled, I don't know the title is transferred completely.
I thought it was more around the parking. Well, it's more than you're right, because the parking issue as well as housing and all that. Yeah.
I think some people are sort of dovetailing this into some other issues now too, saying, well, instead of the overlay, why don't you just put a bunch of affordable housing here, whatever. But if you just do the math, if it's costing you in the neighborhood of $500,000 per unit.
Somebody brought that up last night.
At the city council meeting. I think it was Mr. Sloming. But the thing is, if you actually look at the asbestos abatement cost plus the per unit cost, plus the ongoing maintenance of the property.
Forget it.
This makes no economic sense whatsoever.
No. The best they should do is try to negotiate issues around parking and all that stuff.
The state basically has an interest in having the asbestos abatement done by giving somebody the right to develop the property so that they can get enough return on the investment. That was really...
Is that one of the issues of rights remain vacant?
Yes,
very
very
much.
much.
I didn't know that.
I
bet half the people don't know that.
I think some of the people who are in the know down there are very aware
of
it.
But a lot of people that just willingly sign things without knowing the whole issue.
I'm seeing that happening in a lot of places now.
I just won't do that.
Whether it's the overlay thing or this one here, where basically people who are not really aware of the full picture.
But because it's us against them kind of thing, or it's market versus.
It's sort of like local populism gone crazy.
Yeah.
And it's kind of problematic. And honestly, again, there's no new candidates that I know of as of this week.
Who's Ben Simon? I thought that's.
Oh, I think we mentioned him last week.
Did we have? Oh, you're right.
I
April 2nd.
I meant actually one thing last week I was going to say what he's associated with. So there was this controversial problem with the EMF building in Cambridgeport. He's one of the musician occupants of the EMF building.
I couldn't get the association.
And he's been on the Councilor Mallon's this arts task force.
Okay.
So he's been a very, very outspoken advocate for accommodating musicians and artists, but in a kind of a weird way, because he basically outright says he doesn't support funding for arts, but he does think that somehow the artists should just be given a place to live and whatever because they're artists. And that's always been a problem because, if you say that artists or musicians are some sort of a protected class that must be specially accommodated because it's so important, then you can make the same argument about daycare providers, teachers, you name it, so there's always
gets difficult.
It's a very dangerous.
It would be nice to have artist spaces where they can work, not necessarily live, because that gets into a whole other thing. But working co-op type things, and I don't see why some of these developers can't maybe incorporate that. They're talking about maker spaces and all that. Well, that could be done. I mean, everything's possible, but
and I wouldn't be shocked if in the next go around in Central Square. Some space actually is created for exactly that purpose. But the thing is don't just expect it to be free because you're righteous,
Well,
it's
they already have free permits.
Although
they do have to apply for one, which is good.
That's right.
But,
that's right.
I do. Nicola Williams not Williams.
Right, actually,
She was there also and spoke.
at the forum.
She wasn't a panelist, but she spoke, and she's a candidate, right?
Yeah, and actually,
Yeah.
of the 5 candidates that I know of, I mean, I know that there are others who are going to be candidates, but the ones who are
5 that are on
basically,
your list, yeah.
yeah, there are 5 who basically have kind of put themselves out
Yeah.
there and said, yes, we're going to be candidates. We're going to be running. I think it's
Yeah.
actually further up.
Oh, further up.
So the thing
right.
is that of them, for every kind of populist issue, like whether it's the bike lane or this bicycles,
Yeah.
what is it? What do they call it? They did this ordinance last night.
Cycling safety ordinance,
right?
but doesn't mention anything about safety, which
Right.
Tim
so,
Toomey brought up. And,
right. So there are some real
yeah.
issues that should be discussed.
Yeah.
But the populist candidates, they say, I fully support this. I fully support
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I fully support this overlay. I fully do this like that, and they basically, because they see people in the room
Yeah.
and then they're playing to the crowd,
I know.
So, and I'd have to say that Nicola Williams was the only one who just basically was speaking somewhat independently.
She spoke last night?
No. But at that forum, she's a person who raised issues on the overlay, right? So she's speaking quite independently. So
Yeah, I forget
so
what.
she's
Well, I
kind
don't
of
remember exactly what she
standing
said.
out on that. But all the others are just, wonderful,
Yeah.
wonderful. So anyway, as you know, I'm sort
Wait,
of,
on the overlay? Oh, the
Yeah,
candidates.
yeah,
You're
yeah.
not. That's separate thing. Okay.
I'm
yeah.
the bloom is off the rose in
Yeah.
terms of the incumbents as far as I'm concerned.
Uh,
And I've been kind of looking and hoping that there would be some fresh new candidates who actually think somewhat independently. And honestly, so far, I'm just not really seeing it. I'm just basically seeing, and actually, I'm noticing that there was, what's his name? Javon, what's his name?
Sabrina Wheeler.
Yeah, so I noticed that him and Charles Franklin, either one was actually gave $35 to the other's campaign.
Oh, really?
So what I'm just going to speculate and say that
They're going to run together.
I think what you're going to have is sort of Our Revolution group with Zondervan,
Yeah.
some of these characters.
Maybe.
Mike Connolly pulling the strings like a puppeteer, from his little vantage point there. And then they're going to try and push that through as sort of a slate of candidates before all is
see.
said and done.
I mean, obviously, it's still early, right?
Right. So basically, but as it stands right now, it's basically incumbents and a few more revolutionaries, and then not a whole lot of other choice yet. Anyway, it's still April. We got a ways to go, and we'll see how it sort of shakes out. So, anyway, there were some things of some interest that happened at the city council meeting last night. Maybe we just sort of, since we briefly talked about the bicycle infrastructure thing. I haven't even written anything about it because it was such a foregone conclusion.
Yeah.
The advocates have been sticking press releases all over creation, trying to get in the New York Times or Boston Globe or whatever.
Yeah, that will
Basically,
be the first.
they're trying to mandate the creation of a quote fully protected network of
connected. A connected network on major streets
of-
or on. See, that's the confusion. I mean, there could be a minor street that has to be reconstructed. Does that mean it has to have a bike lane?
Yeah. Well, unless
don't know. I thought it has to
only
be
if it's in the network plan.
And where is the network? Has that been
The
already?
bicycle network plan was an unofficial aspirational document that
Yeah.
was never actually official.
So we don't know which roads
And
those are?
in this ordinance,
Oh.
and this is such a hysterical flaw, and I think one of the councilors brought this up. They said, so in other words, and it says, so anytime you're reconstructing a street that's part of the current bicycle network plan, or any successive plan, it says nothing about being approved or vetted or anything. It just says any successive plan. So in other words, if some city staff says, well, let's just put another mark on this street here, so now it's part of the plan. Then by fiat, the ordinance says that if there's any work ever done on that street, it must have the protected bicycle infrastructure
but I
put
think they're
in.
going to tweak that, no?
Well,
Did it go through?
it's ordained. Now it's ordained.
Okay, but there
Yeah.
can be amendments, right?
Any municipal ordinance can be amended.
Okay.
But once once you create an ordinance like this,
Yeah.
anytime you try and amend it for the purpose of
Yeah.
reasonability,
There's going to be
or
backlash.
overreach, then people say, you can't touch it, you can't touch
Okay,
it.
so but are you saying there is actual map of these connected roads right now? I can see.
Yes.
Where is it? Where does
It's
it
on the
exist?
CDD. It was basically
Okay.
the Karras-Eiderman plan, and it
Is
basically...
it Mass Ave, Broadway, those places?
Broadway's not included.
It's not included.
I'm kind of glad for that, but I think
Yeah,
that's...
but I'm surprised.
I could speculate that it's because the emergency services vehicles will have always used Broadway as the direct way to quickly get from like fire headquarters down Broadway. Believe me, I live on Broadway.
On that too. But what about
Well,
buses that go on these other places?
Right, but the thing is so the buses, yeah, and that is a bit of a problem right now with even some of the infrastructure they're putting out now. But I think James Williamson, the sage of Jackson Place,
but he did everything he
that.
said was pretty on point.
I have to
there.
say, James and I have not always been in
When it comes to cyclists
agreement.
and this whole issue of
Well, he was
bikes,
speaking
he's
up in
pretty
favor of people who use buses and public
and walk,
public
Yeah.
transportation. And in fact, he flat out said that some of the
It's
infrastructure
taking
they did
longer,
down from Central Square toward the river by MIT, the buses have been slowed down and stopped, and there's been a lot more delays as a result of all these wonderful things, right?
Yeah.
So, anyway, I don't like it when there's a taking away of flexibility from the people who are the professionals. Just because one lobby says you must do things a particular way. For example, there's one model that's used a lot of other places in the world of like shared streets and slow streets. In places like Medford, they have what they call bicycle boulevards, right? So it's not all protected, but it's like it's a bicycle priority roads. Basically, under this ordinance says you're not allowed to consider these because it's got to be a particular type of improvement.
So maybe the city won't fix any roads anymore.
No, they got to have to do it anyway. Like River Street.
Yeah, but River Street is not going to be able to have, first of all, a raised. It just isn't. It's too small. It's not as big as Western Ave.
It's not as big as Western Ave.
It doesn't have parking on one side, which is true, but it has a firehouse. It has fire, and I live right across from there now, and it's just...
Mark my words, by the time River Street reconstruction is done, they will have a protected bicycle facility.
Well, they're going to have something. Right now, there's no even signage.
But the thing is, if you try and do it right on the path, on the same level as the road, by the time you stick in all the necessary obstructions and things, whatever...
They can't do it. That's a major bus
right. So I think the only way you make it work is you remove all the parking on all of River Street.
Oh, great.
Now, some people will be perfectly okay with that. Another thing, just to sort of segue into another
It actually isn't a whole lot.
when they were,
anyway.
one of the items they were talking about, there was a city council order, I think it was from Tim Toomey last night, talking about adding metered parking in some
I saw that.
business districts where it doesn't currently exist.
Yeah.
Now, I personally think this was just Tim Toomey basically throwing a stone across to West Cambridge over to Huron Village and Jan Devereaux's neighborhood.
Why?
Because they don't have meters in their business district.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Right? They also don't need meters in there. And Jan Devereaux came back and responded, says, well, not every place actually has conflicts for parking because it's plentiful. So
but only for Cambridge. Oh, wait, is it you don't need a permit there? Because there's sections of the city where you don't need a permit.
On the section where the businesses are, you don't need a permit.
Oh.
Right.
But is there a limit on how long you can park?
I think it's a 2-hour limit. Yeah.
Okay, so that's like Brookline has.
So so I think that's what that was about.
That's reasonable.
But then Councilor Zondervan voted against this, and the reason was he doesn't think we should be adding any more parking to this city. If anything, we need to be removing it all.
Car storage.
Well, sometimes people who try and sound smart about this use the word storage rather than parking.
He used it a lot last night.
But the thing is, it was actually kind of pleasant that I think all other counselors, or almost all of the counselors, responded to Mr. Zondervan's, desire to eliminate parking whenever and wherever possible. I think it was Councilor Mallon was saying, well, maybe that's a nice future to dream of, but it's not there today.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, people do have to deliver goods. Not everybody's going to be going without a motor vehicle.
Yeah.
And the thing is, you can't just wish everything away all the time because you're an idealistic zealot,
Yeah, I'm just concerned because there's so little said. I mean, Craig Kelly said a little bit, where do trucks go? where do deliveries go? You can't do it all from 7 to 8 a.m. in the morning. Sometimes they're going to have to go on a bike lane. Sometimes they're going to a bus. You know, I just
I
feel like
completely
it
agree
just,
with him on that.
where do they think they're going to get their coffee and their? I mean, it just seems insane to me that. They're not doing the whole cycle.
I agree.
I'm using cycle in the wrong word. The loop. You got to look at the whole
Right.
life cycle of things.
Yeah,
you
I
know?
mean, Councilor Kelley, who is the cyclingest
I know he doesn't
counselor
even
who's ever
own a
lived,
car,
right?
and he makes the most sense.
But he makes the most sense. He says, look, you know, he's showing some adulthood here. He says, if you basically say that it is absolutely forbidden for somebody for briefly to stop in a bike lane in order to load some goods, then their option may be to be circling around and around the block. And it is exactly the turning movements at intersections that creates the greatest hazard for cyclists.
Plus congestion and everything.
So he makes the completely correct point. He says,
he's the only one that would make it.
He's the only one who had the bravery and the intelligence to make that point.
And pointing out, agreeing, I mean, Tim Toomey about, you know, how come this doesn't include using lights and I learned that you didn't have to have a helmet after age 16. I never knew that.
Yeah, that's true. I generally,
I know you.
I mean, I've bicycled for 35 years here, and
but
I
at night, you know, the thing
rarely use the helmet.
You can't really at night. You're not a policeman can't even catch someone on a cyclist going like that has no lights. You know, it's just really hard.
Yeah, no,
it's just really hard.
The truth is that a cyclist in this city, protected lanes or not, if you ride around at night without lights, you're putting yourself in danger.
You're putting other people in danger.
And you're putting other people in danger, but you're primarily putting yourself in danger.
Yeah.
And if you're doing it, you're a fool. It's that simple.
I just wish we could enforce that more. But,
yeah, you know, the thing is you can do it, but the thing is there's just so much you can do with legislation and enforcement.
And especially you're expecting people to be educated. Half of them don't live in Cambridge because they're going through Cambridge. We're very, we go through this city.
Yeah,
both cars and cyclists.
It's interesting how oftentimes when people come to speak out about bicycle-related matters, they give it a Somerville address because, you know, there are parts. If you live in Davis Square, you got to pass through Cambridge. You go to work in Kendall Square.
But also the congestion we see a lot of cars going from other places through our city.
Definitely. Anyway, there were some other interesting items last night.
Yeah, we'll get to that in the next half hour.
Yeah, so we'll get to that. One of the ones I particularly have a little fun with is the graduate students.
Oh, I know. I read your piece on that. Yeah.
So
a lot of people came out for that one.
It's true. So anyway, back in a couple of minutes on Cambridge Inside Out.
Okay.